Yeah, you were cutting out for a little bit. I can hear you now. All right. Gotcha. Well, what's going on, folks? It is Geocentric Skeptic, and I'm here with Fantastic Facade. We're having some technical issues right now, so he's working on trying to get that fixed. Tonight, we'll be talking about everybody's favorite topic, sex. Sorta. It's more about sex work, not really sex itself. We're going to be talking about just the legality of it, the morality of it, I guess the effects that it'll have on society, what type of role the government should play, etc.
All right.
All of the fun
I
stuff.
should have that cleared up, so we should be good to go. I do appreciate you
Perfect.
introducing us. As he mentioned, he's Geocentric Skeptic. I'm Fantastic Facade. We're doing sex work. Real quick, before we jump into it, I'll take 1 minute if we can. We're almost at 400 followers and likes on our pages.
Yes.
I'd like us to get more people, and so if you're watching this, listening, commenting, if you see it in passing, it doesn't cost you anything, but like 2 clicks to share it. So share it with your friends, your family, your people that you like, people that you dislike. If you know whatever, even if you don't actually watch the show or listen to it in the process, it would be nice
Just
just to kind of
share
get
it.
a little more notice and spread out a little more. We do really genuinely appreciate the comments and the back and forth. That makes it much more appealing to us. So hopefully, it makes it more appealing to the people that are watching and listening as well. But with all that said, we'd love to hear more from you guys. We'd love to take on comments. Actually, the topic we're doing today was a recommended topic, so it's not that we're opposed to it. It's actually something we do regularly. If there's a topic you guys want us to discuss, we will do so. We also want your feedback on the topics that we're taking on. With all that in mind, we are going to be taking on a very adult-natured topic today. Specifically, we're talking about sex work and sex workers. So, if probably wouldn't necessarily recommend it for children, although we're not going to be talking about any explicit content per se. We are going to be
No, we're
using
not gonna be
term.
talking about positions or anything like that.
No, we are, however, going to be talking about like very explicit, things like prostitution and human trafficking. So it's not going to be
Yeah.
a particularly kid-friendly topic. However, it's not going to be something, if you have a child that's doing a research project on it, maybe worth having them watch and listen, ask questions, that kind of thing. Because
Yeah.
we do actually research these topics. We don't just like randomly assign them. We have information on them available. We also have our handy Google available, things like that. So if you're watching, please say hello in chat. Of course, you can call in if you'd like. Our number scrolling up on the screen is 202-888-5350. I have chat up. We're monitoring it. I actually do need to pull up that phone number for us, so we have that up. But if you've called before and I hadn't gotten there yet, I apologize, but I doubt it. So it's up and available. We are monitoring it as of right now. With that in mind, is there any particular place you'd like us to start, Gio?
We can start with the very first point: legality, regulations, prohibition.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to start because I think this is ultimately the center, I guess, of what we're going to be talking about with sex work and sex workers, and that's the legality. Whether there should be regulations, whether it should be legal or illegal. Obviously, in they say 49 and a half, but essentially all 50 states in the United States, things like prostitution, at least as far as sex work, is illegal. However, pornography is one of the leading causes or leading expenditures of people's money in the world. So when we say sex work, we're not specifically referring to prostitution. However, obviously, sex workers encompass prostitution. So, something that we should be aware of if we use the term specific to prostitution versus use the term specific to sex work. That's why.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, as a libertarian, pretty hardcore libertarian, I mean, you could probably guess where I stand as far as legality, regulation slash prohibition.
I
You
definitely
know,
know where you'd come from on the stance of legality. What about regulations? Because I think the long and the short of our entire conversation on legality is: should sex work be legal? The answer going to be the same for both of us. Yes.
definitely.
Yeah. So I think what should be more of
My
our
body,
discussion.
my rights.
Yeah, I think what should be more of our discussion and what we should focus on is regulation and what about like prohibition, and we could even, if you wanted to take it that far, go as far as to what about people who are currently detained and or imprisoned or jailed for sex acts. Should there be some sort of retribution and or reversing of said laws? So
Oh, definitely. I mean, as far as like releasing people who are in prison for just engaging in capitalism, that capital being their body, which is theirs. Sure, yeah, definitely release them. Like just so I mean, so we both know where we're coming from, but I just want to get like a little short, explanation of why I think sex work should be legal. That and it really just comes down to your property, right? If you don't own your own body, if you can't say what you want to do with your own body, then what rights do you have? You know, like if something belongs to me, then I should have the right to decide who will get to use it and what for. And so if I want to sell it, I ought to be able to do that. That is basically my argument for it. As far as regulations are concerned, I wouldn't put much more regulations on that than I would put on, I guess, like a lemonade stand. I mean, I've had discussions with people about this online, and I don't know excuse my voice, but they often talking about like doing things like mandatory um, STD and STI testing, mandatory condom usage, etc. Um, I'm not for that. Or I mean, for one, I mean, if I don't want to get the, here's the thing: engaging when you're paying for sex, I think it's legal, but it's not some. I think it should ought to be legal, but it's not something that you ought to do. Because for one, I mean, it's kind of dangerous, as far as being exposed to diseases and such. So there's a risk associated with it. But if I want to put myself at that risk, then I should be able to do so. So I don't even like the idea of mandatory contraception or mandatory condoms and stuff like that. I don't even like that. I really want to just keep the government out of it and just let people be responsible. I mean, I don't. I can't imagine. Um, well, I can't imagine someone being as irresponsible as having unprotected sex with a prostitute. But I don't think most people would do that. And even if they would, it's their body. So I don't. I want very few regulations tied to it.
yeah, I mean, I think
That
as far as government regulations, I'm probably on the same page with you. I don't think the government should have much to say with it. I will say in setting up things like the if it were made legal and the illegality, side of things, kind of went away. Setting up something like a brothel where you have voluntary like testing that you can present to potential patrons might actually benefit you and your traffic and therefore the people that work there. However,
Definitely. I totally agree.
That's not a necessity that the government should provide or
Yeah,
demand.
I agree, and that's the thing. So that's the beautiful thing about the free market. You know, if something's a good idea, the government doesn't have to force you to do it, right? And so, you know, look, with these brothels, you know, if like you were saying, if they could show proof that all their workers are completely free, you know, of STD/STI, that would help draw in more customers. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good idea for that to happen. You know, the fact that it's illegal in most in like 49 states, I think
There's 49,
what is it?
officially 49 and a half. Nevada has about 10
Yeah,
counties.
Nevada.
Which,
Yeah, Nevada's the only one that I know of.
yeah, Nevada has about 10 counties out of their 22-ish counties total in which prostitution is technically legal.
Yeah,
and
and so and that's
typically
that's the
we're
thing. So
like I said, we're typically referring to prostitution when we say sex work because the biggest driver of sex work in the world is pornography. So let's not gloss over that. But typically when we're talking about sex workers, we're typically referring to prostitutes and prostitution because pornography has become kind of a thing of its own, which is why it's on its own page, and like prostitution is a separate thing because pornography has a very special place in the government and everybody else's heart, it seems. And we'll kind of get around to that. But as far as prostitution, sex work, in the United States at least, 49 and a half, which means half of Nevada, states prostitution is legal across the board.
Yeah. So like what I was going to say was that the fact that it's illegal in the vast majority of the United States, it forces it into a black market. So now these brothels or whatever you want to call them that house these prostitutes or escorts, whatever you want to call them, you know, they don't have the luxury of showing that sort of advertisement. They couldn't say, "Hey, our people are clean," right? Because that's just going to attract more attention. So the fact that it's forced in the black market kind of forces it to be, you know, more risky for both the clients and the workers.
Yeah, I agree completely. And in fact, I mean, I think if like government didn't, if it wasn't illegal and government had no regulation, you'd kind of see this natural occurrence of things happening kind of within the market itself, of where you have, I mean, and like, don't like take anything into what I'm saying beyond exactly what it sounds like. You could essentially have higher end clients based off of certain properties and how quote unquote rare people find those properties. And you'd also have, you know, options for like, oh, this particular location has STD checks done every, you know, 60 days or whatever. And like you could inform people that these are things that happen. And you could even inform people of the tests that are being done. You could inform people of, you know, etc. And you could even have rules like necessary or required protection. And if you didn't want to participate in that, you just wouldn't utilize that particular location. The government's unnecessary for any of that to occur.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it just goes back to that truism, you know, that if something is a good idea, if something's really going to benefit you, you don't need to be forced to do it.
Yeah.
So,
at least for the majority.
I mean, the majority of people. I mean, you have your, you know, like your cases where, you know, people are like mentally disabled, etc. But like,
you also have your cases of people being intentionally ignorant or stubborn,
irresponsible.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
so, and you know, I won't. Obviously, I'm not going to call out any individuals because I don't personally know any, but people actually do know one come to think of it offhand. I'm not going to call that person out though. But people that are like
Yeah.
anti-vax. Like
But yeah,
that's
but just the
that's just
entrepreneurship that we see that's driving the free market, they're coming up with all of these good ideas, attracting all these customers, right? And the government didn't have to force them to do that. They do it because it's good for their business.
yeah, and it's
And
going to make them money.
what would be good for us? Yeah, what would be good for sex work is to ensure that it's safe. For the work as for STDs, STIs, and also violence. And that's another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about too. So the fact that because like for sex work, it's mostly done by women. When we talk about prostitution, you got men as well, but it's mostly done by women, and it's a very dangerous business. Mostly because it's forced in the black market. It's forced in the black market because it's illegal. And like for instance, like an escort goes to meet a client and she meet him in a hotel room, and let's say she gets beat up and gang raped. You know, her her one recourse would be to go to the police, but by doing so, she would incriminate herself.
Yep.
And so that alone just makes it so much more dangerous for them.
Yeah, and then of
You know,
course that leads to things like, and obviously to get into the term that's often used associated with it is you often see prostitutes that have pimps because they need
yeah,
protection because stuff
yeah,
like that that's
exactly.
happened. They get ripped off. There's a guy that person that comes in and they can't pay, or they refuse to pay, or they don't pay you what they said they were going to, etc. And there's no paper trail here. It's not like you're writing up a contract and doing all this other stuff because the legality isn't there for the United States. So you just get ripped off, or you don't get paid at all, or you get abused, or worse. And then there's no recourse unless you then have protection. And so you pay someone protection money, essentially, and it kind of perpetuates itself. And then instead of having that, if you just made it legal and then had things like brothels that were allowed, where you either have set rates or you can set them yourself, and then you pay for a space or whatever through the organization or company or whatever, then that becomes a thing that you just don't have to worry about. It also makes it a new avenue of potential, like, avenues to make money, because typically you're not paying for things like prostitution and escorts with credit cards or debit cards or whatever. And that just opens up another avenue in which that can provide money for the person offering the services.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the arguments that I always hear against it is that it's like it's similar to the drug argument that I was hearing that I was talking about last week. Whereas if you legalize drugs, then everybody's gonna start doing drugs. And like I hear that often with this, like you legalize prostitution, it's pretty much going to be ubiquitous. Like my neighbor is going to start prostituting herself. Everywhere you're going to go, there's going to just be hookers just walking around. I mean, come on, that's kind of silly. Um, think of all the other things that are legal that you don't see everywhere. Like I mean, like plumbing is legal. Yeah, you don't. There's not plumbers. Everybody's not a plumber. You know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's a really bad argument is to say that it's just going to be everywhere if you allow it. And I would push even and farther. Like even if it was everywhere, isn't that if everybody just made a decision to just do like this all the time? Wouldn't that be their right? It's their body, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
I mean,
obviously, like what people don't recognize is just like with everything else, is eventually there can be oversaturation. Like
Yeah.
you're just going to have an oversaturation of the market, in which case people just aren't making money doing it, and then they get either a second job or they get a new job altogether. And it's going to regulate because essentially you have too much of a good thing, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like if everyone turned to it automatically, like people in every job field is just going to quit and start doing sex work. That's just not the way it works. And if
No, not at
if that
all.
were what you wanted to do, just fun facts throwing it out there for you. That's what that really big one up there under on the second tab. That's what that's for. Pornography. Because if you wanted to get into sex work, that is the easiest step in the door that's completely legal right now.
Yeah.
And
It really doesn't even make a lot of sense, if you think about it, because prostitution is illegal, right?
Yeah,
So,
prostitution's
you can,
illegal. Like
you
the big
can't
joke
have.
is,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the big joke is that prostitution's illegal unless you have a camera present.
That's what I was gonna say. So you can't get paid for sex unless you record it.
Yeah, that's
If
exactly
you
right.
record it and post it on the internet, okay, now it's fine to get
Don't
paid
even have
for
to
it.
post it on the
Like,
internet. You can record it with the intention of posting it on the internet or the intention of getting it distributed one day, and it is now legal. You
Yeah.
never have to have it distributed.
how
It does
stupid
not
is
count. So, just saying, you can even do things like indicate that you don't want your face or most of your body in the video. And now prostitution is essentially legal. Not only
Yeah,
is it
'cause now it's
legal,
porn.
it is a huge, huge moneymaker.
Mm-hmm.
Pornography drives the industry. It drives the technology and entertainment industry. And if you don't think so, just look into some of the technological advancements and what we've done with like cameras and things like Blu-ray, 4K, 8K, stuff like that. It's all because of pornography. It's not a joke. Look into it. Like it's not a joke. It's not an exaggeration. Literally, pornography drives the industry of technology and visual, audio, and things like 3D, like virtual reality entertainment. Pornography is the leading driving factor, hands down, no questions asked.
I think so. I had pulled up the most visited websites in the world. And so, as you can guess, number one is Google.
Yeah.
Followed by YouTube, okay, Facebook, Wikipedia, and then the next one is Pornhub, followed by X videos. And so, Pornhub and X videos, they're ahead of Twitter, Reddit, Amazon, Instagram, Yahoo, and literally anything else that you could think of.
Yeah,
it is,
and even like foreign sites like Alibaba, which has like billions of people that visit as use it as a shopping site for essentially like non-Amazon items. And I mean that in every kind way possible. Nothing against Alibaba. I'm just saying it's an incredibly popular site, especially overseas.
Yeah.
So you have major sites that everyone's heard of. Everyone knows Amazon. Amazon has their own truck service. Like it's just the way it is. Like and
they're number 9 on the list. And Pornhub and X videos is 5 and 6 respectively.
And just to throw a really fun kink in that number in case anyone didn't know. Pun not intended. Sorry. The fact of the matter is Pornhub owns X videos, so you actually get to combine that number. And sure, there's going to be overlap, but just throwing that out there.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Pornhub owns X videos. They own I think they own 20 minor quote-unquote sites, and I don't mean that in, like, it's for minors. I mean that in, it's not Pornhub major. It's things like X videos and other pornographic sites. Comment on YouTube real quick. It says, OnlyFans since COVID has so females and males an insane amount of money. Yeah, so there's things like cam modeling, which is just, I'd say essentially, since we're talking of sex work, cam modeling and pornography are very, very, there's a very thin line between them. I know people that do cam modeling. I have
So, please explain cam modeling for the audience.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
okay,
I know what OnlyFans is. What is it? They just
essentially,
expose their body,
yeah,
except for their
cam
privates or
modeling is
something?
essentially OnlyFans meets live chat.
Okay.
So, and that's not the only thing it is, but like essentially, it is a place in which people can sell their own pictures and or videos that they've either taken or had taken of themselves, and oftentimes they're in lewd and or nude like poses, positions, etc. Sometimes they even go as far as to do and perform sexual acts upon themselves or have themselves videoed in sexual acts with other people, etc. And then it's just this own it's a personal porn site sometimes. Sometimes it's just this is a girl that's in a bikini, or this is a guy that's in, nothing but a sock. It's fine. Do whatever. Do whatever.
Yeah,
do whatever
enough details.
do whatever you want to do.
I'm trying.
But essentially, it's a personal kind of thing, and it goes
Gotcha.
even further with things like OnlyFans and Fansly, etc. There's a bunch of sites out there for this kind of stuff, in which you're supposed to have direct interaction with the people on the other side of the screen. And so
I saw where you know that rapper Bad Baby.
Yeah,
or Bad Bobby, whatever her name is. Like I heard that she had made close to like 40 million on OnlyFans.
Yeah. So I mean, I can tell you, I personally know a fairly successful OnlyFans model, and when I say a fairly successful OnlyFans model, I don't know many people that make more money than they do. They make on the order of $250,000 a year. They're considered pretty successful. Now, they sell pictures of themselves in bikinis and etc. There's tier listings, and I don't know if you saw, but actually pretty recently in the news, something that's been going on is that OnlyFans groups, there have been like a civil lawsuit against them because there are account managers that can actually take over for the person that's supposedly posting this stuff, and they can chat with clients.
Oh, so I think I heard about this, and it wasn't really them chatting with them, right?
Exactly.
It wasn't really them, the model. It was just some random
We'll
dude.
use Bad Bobby or whatever, Bad Baby, whatever her name is, as an example. Like, let's just say, because now she's uber famous, like she's not quite a household name, but she's famous enough where, like, when she got pretty famous, and she was still doing this, she could essentially pay a group or a company to log into this account, post photos that she already had, post videos that she already had, and chat with people, and she would pay them to do so she could do other things, just do her own stuff.
Yeah.
The problem with doing that is that you're essentially breaking the contract that you have with the people that are paying for the subscription service, because what you're telling them is that it's actually you on the other side of that screen. And what's happening is you're getting some random dude from this company that you've never heard of that's making $15 an hour to chat as if it were you while you're out living your life. And I'm not saying it's not a clever thing or that it's not a good thing to do. It's just not what you agreed to. That's not what's actually happening.
Yeah, it's a breach of contract. Yeah, I definitely agree.
So there was a civil lawsuit that was going on against, I think, over 100 OnlyFans models and I'm sure the list was growing, but because they were essentially farming out their responsibilities to their followers. And so it's just you're making a contract, and then you're breaking that contract. But anyway, that's a long thing around.
I wanted to go back to the legality and regulations part. There was something that had just kind of crossed my mind, and when I said I didn't want any regulations. So age requirements. I don't think like a 13-year-old should be allowed to do that. I'd keep it about 21. That's about the only regulation I would put on that. That's why I just wanted to get that out before people think, oh no, geocentric is okay with like children. doing that. No,
Yeah,
I'm not.
and mainly because we live in the United States, but I just wanted to point out there are currently about 26 countries or so that have legal prostitution, including some really, really big countries that other people have heard of. If you know anything about, the world other than the United States, like Germany and the Netherlands and a lot
Yeah,
of places in
Netherlands
Europe.
is famous for this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Netherlands is really famous for their red light district because they're just so open about it. But Germany
Yep.
is considered one of the most open countries in the world when it comes to prostitution. They have some of the fewest regulations. And by the way, they also have some of the fewest crimes involving human trafficking and like sex crimes. So
What do you know?
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy how
Yeah.
those things
Yeah.
coincide.
Yeah. You
No,
don't
never would
force
have
an entire
guessed.
industry into the black market, and what? Crime goes down.
Yeah. Anyway.
Violence goes down, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, crimes against women, sex crimes, and yeah, they went down in Germany since the legality of it. But just wanted to kind of point that out. That although we are in the United States, I mean, I am aware there's quite a few other countries. The Netherlands is really famous for the red light district, but Germany's up there. Denmark. There's a lot of places in Europe that have essentially prostitution in and of itself is legal, and then they limit something else like brothels or like street prostitution. That's what they often refer to it as, where that's not legal. Like you can go work in a brothel, that's fine, but you can't just stand on a street corner. Not the way it works. So, I know there's some that just have no regulations at all. They just don't care.
Hmm.
And then there are quite a few countries where prostitution is not only illegal, but it's worthy of the death penalty. So that's fun.
You know, I had here was something that I had read about. I read about this a few years ago. So like, back in I think it was like the mid 19th century when there was Queen Victoria. She was she was reigning in England, and she was concerned about the high divorce rate in in England, and so she had created this secret red light district. That way, men could go and sleep with the prostitutes, and then come home and still be happy. Like it's a very strange rationale, but that's what she created that for. It's a red light district, so married men can go and sleep with prostitutes, and that is Victoria's secret.
Yeah, so I mean,
Where
I think we've all heard the rumors and whatnot. Essentially, Queen Victoria set up prostitution rings because men weren't coming home from war,
yeah,
and then they were cheating on their wives, and that led to high divorce rates, etc. So, yeah,
but
I
you
mean,
had
there are rumors that this is true. I can't point to good historical data saying that that's exactly what happened. But there are rumors of this happening. There are in Europe and in modernity and historically there were and are brothels throughout Europe that definitely started and grew exponentially greater through Victoria's reign. So
you had mentioned how the countries where it's legalized that they have lower cases of human trafficking. So like that's actually a bullet point that we have up here. So I was thinking we could jump into that because
yeah,
that's
and
actually the
it's a very
one of them main
sad.
rationales that's used against prostitution. I didn't want to mention that earlier because we already had it as a point. But
Yeah, I mean it's a very
human
sad
trafficking
fact of
is
the matter.
say it again.
I said it's a very sad fact of the matter. Probably like the most
Yeah.
uh, harrowing of the points that we're going to touch on because uh, human trafficking is insane. If you haven't and don't know anything about human trafficking, essentially, people, typically females, are kidnapped at a young age and then taken and essentially groomed until they're essentially sold to rich jerks. I was going to use a different word, but I forgot we're on a podcast. Um, Essentially sold to rich jerks who then use them as their own personal sex slaves.
Yeah.
So,
And so, like,
yeah.
I wanted to address like that argument. Like, in human trafficking is awful. Should do everything we can to stop it, but I don't think that's a reason to ban prostitution. To me, that's tantamount to banning sex because people are raped. I don't see a reason to stop someone from doing something on their own volition just because someone else may be forced to do it.
Yeah, and
I'm saying,
I don't know this for a fact. I should have looked up the data beforehand, but I'd wager that in places where prostitution is legal, the cases of people that are human trafficked in those countries are lesser than of those in which that prostitution is illegal.
yeah, probably. I mean, like the market for it is just much lower. Like it's not in the black market, so you don't have criminals um jumping into this business. It's you have legitimate, entrepreneurs, businessmen and women who are just trying to make a buck and not trying to, you know, take part in organized crime. So, yeah, it's huge. Human trafficking apparently it's the third largest crime industry, right behind drug dealing and arms trafficking.
Yeah, drug dealing,
So,
unfortunately, which we talked about on the War on Drugs in just our last episode, but it actually makes up and in like 1% of the entire GDP of the world. And then
yeah,
I think if the numbers serve me correctly, my memory serves me correctly, uh, human trafficking unfortunately makes up about a third of that number. So about a third of a percent of the entire GDP, which is still an insane number.
yeah,
So
yeah, it's awful, is it? And unfortunate that I mean, like that such a thing even exists. And I think the people who go about attacking the second sex industry. I mean, I think they have good intentions. Well, some of them may not, but the the this tactic of trying to ban prostitution altogether or sex work altogether as a result of trying to save people from getting trafficking. It's kind of sense. I mean, and not to jump back to like another podcast episode, but like remember what you were saying about the guns, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, you know, even if something's like it's already illegal to kidnap people, right? It's already illegal to go and commit mass murder.
yeah,
If you're banning a gun, they're not going to care about that it's illegal to have a gun.
yeah.
You know,
If you're banning
just like
sex work, they're not. They don't care if they're like kidnapping children. They just
exactly.
it doesn't
If
matter.
prostitution is illegal, they don't care, because if they're already if they're resorting to something as low as kidnapping children, and then they're not going to care that the prostitution itself is illegal. And that was the one of the main rationales for eliminating this very popular website called Backpage. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I hadn't until literally a few minutes before the podcast. So if you want to take over it, I don't mind.
Sure. So Backpage, it's a classified page. So you could just sell services for what or things. And you could sell people will post job advertisements. You could say, "Oh, I need a roommate for an apartment that I'm in," or "I need someone to paint my house." So you can sell a car, you know, just about anything, just like think of like the Facebook marketplace. That's essentially what this was. But what it was also popular for was for sex work. So you would have uh, different types of sex workers up there where they do erotic massages, strippers, escorts, um, your sugar daddies, your sugar mamas, or whatever they would advertise up there. So it was a bunch of that going on. And Um, I don't know of any cases of this, but presumably there was also advertisements for um, illegal. Uh, well, of course, sex was prostitution is illegal, but apparently presumably there was advertisements of underage in sex work going on. And I don't know of any cases like that. I know a lot of people that have used it, to use that website to hire strippers for bachelor parties or birthday parties, etc. And they had never seen any sort of advertisement for a child. And it's kind of even hard to believe there's something that somebody would even do that, for one, because I mean that's pretty risky. I mean, think about me, like when I was single, like if I was going to hire, some strippers for from bachelor party, and I'm scrolling through the advertisement and I see someone advertising a child, I'm going to call the police.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sure how much the rationale makes, but if you go visit their Backpage website, that's what you'll see. You'll see this warning, and you'll have seals from different organizations, including the FBI, Department of Justice, and the IRS, and it'll say that Backpage and affiliate websites have been seized, and the date is April 6, 2018. So, yeah, this happened under Trump, and one of the benefits of Backpage that I had for sex workers is that what they would often do, they post a picture not showing their face, and they'll have like their fake name, and they'll have a number with that would go to like a Google phone, like a Google number, kind of like pretty much like what we have for the show. Right. And it would allow them to vet clients before meeting up with them. And I made it a lot safer for the workers in this already dangerous field, just because it's forced into the black market. And so they took that away from them. And so like now they had to go through, other avenues. And so Backpage, I'm not sure how much of a dent, if any, that it actually put into the money made off of sex work. It's probably negligible, because I mean, if you Google the word Backpage, what you'll see is a bunch of Backpage alternatives. You see stuff like Bedpage or Backpage alternate or something, something like that. It'll be some sort of like clever change in the name. So that classified website is that type of website is still, all over the web, but the Backpage itself is removed.
Yeah.
It didn't. I'm not sure how much of a dent it put in it. Probably nothing.
Negligible, to be honest. It sounds to me like, I mean, A, there's probably alternatives that have always existed, and B, I'm sure there are other sites in which they're either discussed in code or there are infinite number of ways kind of around this, just like the Silk Road thing. I don't know if you remember the Great Silk Road, but it was one of the biggest underground drug rings in the world, and we were like, oh, we shut down the Great Silk Road. Congratulations. Well, drug use has just been on the rise. Like, it just hasn't slowed down. That's what I'm saying. Busting the Silk Road literally did nothing. Like, it didn't matter.
There's another one. There's another website called Yes Backpage. That's essentially just a Backpage alternative. And then I told you about Bedpage, and they have different bed pages for each city. I just Googled this right now. It's called you could go dc.bedpage.com, and I'm not going to click on the site. There's a computer that I'm using, but you can find sex workers here, in a DC area where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so, and they have it for like almost like like pretty much every region. I see Las Vegas, I see Boston, just like I said, this did essentially nothing.
Yeah, so I mean,
So,
essentially, not to belabor the point of like the fact of the matter is like a there shouldn't be like it shouldn't be illegal anyway, but b making it illegal hasn't really slowed it down. All it's done is it caused problems for people that are sex workers, and then
mhm.
like to me honestly it's just like a moreover, even though I don't we don't have the same views on the government. We have similar views on the government. It's almost silly to me to think that the government's just like throwing away opportunities to tax people. They're missing such an opportunity with drug
Oh
work
yeah,
and
definitely.
with
I didn't
sex
even think about
work.
that. Definitely.
Like it's just the same thing that was said about the idea of the war on drugs. Like, do you know how much money you could make on taxing sex, on taxing drugs?
Hmm.
Like, that's just an insane missed opportunity to me. The government wants their hand in every pot. They want to be part of everything. Well, if you just had mild regulations where you made it illegal, or even if you did things like, and even if it started as making it legal but having a lot of restrictions, it still would be a step in the right direction. Because it just seems that the more regulations you put on it, the more you force people into the underground, the more you force people to do things kind of under the cover of darkness, no pun intended, the more dangerous it is for those people. And honestly, sometimes that's the only way they can live because that's how they pay their bills. That's the only way they can afford to pay their bills. And so taking something like this away from them or making it illegal that just puts them in further danger or puts them at risk of going to jail or prison isn't really the way to kind of go about this.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially. I mean, not to get on my libertarian rant, but that's essentially the problem with government. You know, when if the if the if the only answer you have is a hammer, then every problem has to be a nail. And so the government is really the only way they know of to fix something. It's just to make it illegal. It doesn't work. They just try to enforce it, even more strictly. And this really isn't the way to just go about, you know, regulating society. It's like they have this round peg and trying to push it into a square hole, and it doesn't fit. So they're like, okay, instead of just finding a peg that fits the hole, they're just gonna try to push harder. Now that's not how things work. So making something illegal and trying to punish and trying to threaten people with jail time, that isn't going to stop people from paying for sex. People are still sneaking into it. You have even politicians that get caught doing stuff like this. It's not going to go away. It's probably the oldest business there is.
Yeah, I mean, it's often joked that this is the oldest job on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, you know chimpanzees do it. I was amazed for that. Like chimpanzees, they'll exchange sex for fruit.
Yeah.
But I was tripping out when I heard about that. I was like, wow, that's crazy. What do you think about the societal impact? Let's say. So I guess we kind of get away from regulations for right now, as we get to and lean towards the end of the show. What type of impact will it have on society? I guess
If we
like
just decriminalized it?
morally. Go ahead.
If we just decriminalized it? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah. What type of impact?
So
What
in
will that
general,
do
I
to
just
the children, to
I mean,
families?
I genuinely don't see it as being much of a societal impact in general, because it already happens. Essentially, from my 2 cents worth here is that because it's illegal now, it's looked down upon as this dark, dingy, negative, like bad thing that only desperate people do. However, when you look behind, if you peel back the curtain a little bit, if you look, just beyond what's right in front of your face, you recognize that anyone from politicians to preachers to people that live next door, A, probably have sex, or then B, may have paid for some sort of sexual act and or watch pornography and or promote the pornographic business and or personally do cam modeling or know someone who does, or etc. Like, there's no getting away from these facts. Like, the population's gonna grow because people are having sex. It's just the way it works. However, as far as I feel like the neat and trim, if you will, kind of bubble people that are really concerned that if you legalize prostitution, it's going to taint their family, it's going to taint their children. I think it's a really bad way of going about things to try to protect people from the reality of the world. And I think by making it legal, you'd A, dampen that blow, but B, you'd kind of go to show that there's not really a lot to be terrified of. And the best way to prepare someone for, quote unquote, the real world isn't by trying to put them in a bubble and keep everything out. It's by showing and explaining things to them in a way that A, makes sense, and then B, shows why it's either beneficial or not beneficial to either society and or their own health and or their own future and or career. So by cutting off all ties to, like, and nothing against them personally, I don't really care, but like people like Mormons or people like the Mennonites, things like that, where they literally have their own culture and society, and they keep kind of everything away from everyone else. You're not really preparing people for the real world. What you're doing is you're trying to protect them from something that they may one day encounter and then not know what to do about it because you didn't prepare them for such an exact scenario. And I think it's just a poor way to go about things. Now, off of that high horse, to answer the question of societal impact, if it's legalized, I think the worst societal thing that's going to happen is that it's probably going to become more frequent, and then you may have to introduce people to it at a younger age and or inform people of what's going on in certain, locations, etc., if that's the case. Other than that, I think what you're doing is you're dampening the blow because you're not making it this illegal, dingy, dirty act that has to be done in secret and the shadows and in the garages that's currently people are getting prosecuted over it. Instead, you're making it this consensual legal thing that essentially not necessarily normalizing prostitution, but just kind of using it, kind of like treating it kind of like we treat alcohol. People that want alcohol can go get it, assuming they have an ID. That doesn't mean they should drive drunk. It doesn't mean they should drink their liver into oblivion. Same thing I would say about prostitution. People that want to have sex that don't have a partner currently could pay for it. As long as they're of age and both people are consenting, that doesn't mean that they should have sex so often that they get STDs, or that they should force themselves upon other people, or that they should impregnate a bunch of people without their, when that's not the desire. Things have to be done with moderation and consideration, and I think by just kind of looking at things with a critical thinking in mind, and by really understanding like what's going on, you don't really have a huge economic or societal wave. What you have is just a drop in the bucket that people are just like, oh, okay, that's legal now. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, because for me, I always think about like, where does personal responsibility end? I mean, begin, Because if we're so concerned that, hey, if we legalize this, and it's just going to destroy the families, like moment prostitution is legal, you're going to have husbands and fathers, going out sleeping with prostitutes. I mean, that's kind of dumb. I'm not going to go sleep with a prostitute tomorrow if prostitution becomes legal. Just like I wouldn't start doing crack tomorrow if they legalize crack. For the people who are so concerned about this that they want to keep it illegal. I mean, you're more than welcome to just not participate and those kind of activities.
Yeah, chances are you're not anyway. And it's not
Yeah.
going to impact you anyway. Like my whole philosophy on life, and something that I've tried to take to heart, and something I've tried to live by for at least 5 years now. It may be longer, but at least 5 years, is that if it's not going to personally impact you in the morning, you probably shouldn't care about it. Now, what that means is, in short, if you want to go out and smoke crack, you can. Just be aware that in the morning, you're going to be dealing with the repercussions, which may mean not having a job. That's your problem. However, if your neighbor goes and smokes crack in their own house, and they don't come to your house, you don't even, other than them telling you that they were going to go smoke crack, you wouldn't have known the difference. Why? Why does it matter? It didn't impact you in any way, shape, or form. In fact, unless they do something insane and violate your property rights or something else, then you may not have known anyway. So why does it bother you? Why do you care? Just like at the very beginning of the podcast, Gio said, your body, your rights, you should be able to do whatever you want to with it, including selling it for services, etc. Same thing is true for drugs. Same thing is true for alcohol. Same thing is true for, marijuana, the soft drugs. Same thing is true for sex. Chances are, if you're not into that, you're not going to know what's going on anyway.
Yeah, man.
Just plain and simple of it. Your neighbor
true.
could literally be doing cam modeling right now, and you could be completely unaware of it. And guess what? It doesn't impact your paycheck. It doesn't impact your kids, how you raise your kids. It doesn't impact how you should teach them or what you should teach them. It doesn't impact your religion. It doesn't impact your family. It doesn't change the fact that, your husband's not cheating on you, or your husband might cheat on you, or that he might look at cam models. That's already happening. It's already a thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the stuff that's happening, the stuff that's going on doesn't change just because you suddenly make it legal, quote unquote. All that changes is that the people that were having this illegal act that was going on now have a way to do it legally without being, potentially put into jail or prison. And that also gives them an opportunity to report things like violence or human trafficking that's going on without being worried about going to jail or prison and losing everything they work for. To me, it's a societal gain. As far as what the society could gain, or the impact that they could have on society, it would be a gain. It would be a net gain, because the people that are participating in this stuff right now, that are using it to make a living and using it to pay bills, could then turn around and tell the cops or tell somebody that they trust that there's either human trafficking going on, or that there's violence, domestic violence, etc. And then something could be done about it without them having to worry about not being able to pay their bills.
Yeah, without to worry about having to incriminate themselves just by trying to do something good, or incriminate themselves by saying that they've been raped or subject of some sort of crime while they were working.
Exactly,
So,
and not saying they always go hand in hand, but like somebody comes in and they're strung out on drugs. They may not follow the typical rules that you would follow when dealing with a sex worker, and now there's problems that creates for the sex worker. It's just over and abundantly shows that, like, even if it was just regulated to death but it was legal, it would still be better than complete prohibition. And we see this in history, we see this in like actual American history, and we see this in other countries. The prohibition of alcohol in the United States just did not work. It turned people into liquor runners. It turned people into bootleggers, the quite literal term. That's where it came from. And it didn't work. And people wanted alcohol, and they got alcohol. And guess what? The world didn't fall apart when they made alcohol legal again. But I bet money that there were people saying, well, if you legalize it, it's going to impact my family. here's the thing. People are already getting drunk. They're already getting their booze. They're already doing this stuff. Whether it's impacting your family or not is only relevant to whether that person is getting drunk and acting on your family or not. Now, all you're doing is making it a crime for them to do so. Didn't change anything.
Go through. Well, we're right at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I just switched over to our wrapping up page. Any closing cleanup? Anything you wanted to add or anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, guys. For those that tuned in, thanks for tuning in. We'll try to get a. I know I said this last week that we're going to try to get a topic out sooner, and we just didn't. Again, we actually we settled on this topic like probably about an hour before the show, just because we couldn't think of anything else. But we're gonna try again next week. I'll try to be a little more active in the discussion page. I'll try to post, questions and try to get some of your thoughts on those. And guys, send us ideas for topics. We wanna hear from you. We want to talk about what you want to talk about.
I mean, I hate to go down the rabbit trail and do it to you guys, but I mean, essentially, we're just gonna have to start insulting people directly. Got to get some sort of interaction from you. We want interaction. We want to know what it is that'll fire you up, that'll get you commenting, that'll have you giving us topic suggestions and feedback. And I will say, at least from my behalf, I don't mind hitting you where it hurts. I will take anything that you hold personal, and I will debate with you about it. So. If there's something that you want to hold to, we can do it. We can make it happen. So please let us know. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in, watching, listening after the fact, etc. Please let us know topic suggestions, and we'll see you guys next week.